Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. I had been dating a guy for almost 2 years, and our relationship had ups and downs, and I guess every relationship has them. When I first introduced him to my dad, he said that he did not get a good vibe from the guy, but I did not take that seriously, as my dad would have a problem with anyone and everyone. My mom died when I was just a kid, so my sister and I were raised by our dad, who did everything to provide us with the best life. He has been working hard and looking after everything since my mom died. There were some things about Dad which would ruin the atmosphere of our house. First of all, my dad is a self-absorbed person who cannot let anyone take control and acts like he knows the best. He tries to be humorous and ends up hurting the feelings of others. He is judgmental and feels like everyone is a culprit but him. You can imagine how tough sometimes it would get if you had to live with him. When I moved out of my house, he told me that my boyfriend was going to throw me out of his house and that I could never go back to my dad. I did not even listen to him and moved out. After a few days, I realized I had not brought my documents with me and had to get them from Dad's place. I knew my dad was going to create a scene just because he did not want me to move out even when I was almost 25. I called my sister and told her that I wanted to pick up my documents and if she could take the folder and come out of the house, as I did not want to face my dad. My sister collected all my documents and was about to leave the house when my dad noticed her and took the folder. He then called and told me that the documents were safer at his place and I could stop worrying about them. I told him that I could need them and had to keep them with me, to which he told me that I was soon coming back, so I should let them be there. I was so pissed, as I had to apply for jobs and needed those documents right away. I knew I had to get them from his house, so I went there straight. My dad was home and told me to get out of the house. I did not step back and told him that I was there to get my things and went to my room, leaving him yelling in the lounge. I took my folder and was getting out of the room when he tried to snatch the folder, but I was able to get it out of the house. I did not talk to my dad after that until me and my husband had decided to get married and I had to invite my family. I went to my dad's place and told him, as his predictions had gone wrong and the guy was not going to leave my side, he could put everything aside and attend our wedding. My dad seemed upset to hear that, but promised to attend the wedding. The preparations were done and everything went well and we got married. Almost 2 years later, I found out that my husband was cheating on me and had a girlfriend. I was heartbroken and decided to go back to my dad's place. When I went back, instead of comforting me, my dad told me that he knew it and seemed like he had won. He kept telling me that he had a bad feeling for that guy and knew he was going to cheat on me because I had average looks while he was quite handsome and earned well, while I was still a jobless person. My dad kept attacking me like that and targeted my self-esteem because I was already heartbroken. I felt like he was right, but he did not stop doing that. Yesterday morning, we were having breakfast when my dad started his speech again, telling me that I was worthless and that if he had not accepted me, I would have been begging on the streets. I lost my cool and threw the glass of juice at him. He was enraged and started yelling at me. I then got up and packed my stuff to leave. I had no idea where I was going to go, and then I called my aunt, Mom's sister, and told her the whole story. She comforted me on the phone and told me that I could come to her place. I am at my aunt's and I have no idea what I'm going to do, being this much helpless and hopeless. I'm here with an update after a while. I worked with my aunt as she had a home-based business until I landed a job. I then filed for divorce and got rid of that cheater. As my dad's family, which is a huge one, got to know that I had moved to my aunt's place, they started gossiping about why I had done that. So many of them said that it was because my dad was unbearable, as he could not see anyone else but himself. When my dad heard about these things, he started calling me and told me that he wanted to apologize. I knew what he was up to and was being kind just for the sake of his own image. I moved out of my aunt's house a couple of months after landing a job and told her to keep my address a secret. So my dad visited my aunt and found out that I'd moved out. He told her that he missed me and was embarrassed about treating me like that, as he had promised my mom that he was going to look after the girls. My aunt still did not disclose my address and told him that she would talk to me. I talked to my dad on the call and he almost begged to see me. I told him that I was going to visit him and then we could talk. I know some of you guys are going to bash me, but the situation is different now. I do not depend on him and would not have to move into his house, so seeing him, if he is embarrassed and is begging, is not going to affect me. So I went to see my dad, and he seemed very happy. He was teary and told me that he was embarrassed about what he had done with me. I told him that everything was all right and I had no grudges towards him. We had a great time and everything went well. A couple of weeks later, my dad told me that he was arranging a family dinner and I was invited. I was going to get together with the whole family after so long and was very excited about that. We were having dinner when an aunt of mine asked why I had divorced my husband. My dad said that it was because he had found someone better and I had to act as if I didn't care. My dad then laughed and everyone else joined him. I got up from my seat and told him that if I opened my mouth, he would face difficulty handling what I had to say about him. My dad sort of challenged me and told me to say whatever I could because he was sure I did not know anything. I raised my voice and asked my uncle, my dad's brother, if he knew where my grandma's jewelry was and that he was getting a much lesser amount of the rents for the houses that my granddad owned and were now under my dad's supervision. Everyone was quiet and stunned. My dad could not speak a word. I took my things and left after that. My dad and my uncle both have been calling me since then, and I have not responded to them till now. My dad left hundreds of messages telling me that I was lying and had to stop that. He said that I was just doing that to get revenge on him. I did not respond to his texts. He went to my aunt's place and begged her for my address, but she refused to tell him. He then told her that she had to talk to me and convinced me to tell everyone that I was lying and did that just to embarrass him. My aunt called me and told me everything he had said. She also told me that my dad had gone crazy because my uncle was threatening to sue him. My dad was trying to convince my uncle that I had done that out of rage and that he had never cheated on my uncle. As I told you guys last time, my uncle was also calling me and I knew what he wanted. I responded to his call and he bombarded me with questions. He also told me the same story and said that he wanted to confirm if whatever I had said was right because my dad had been smooth with his dealings and my uncle never suspected him. I told him that I had nothing to say and hung up. I knew my dad had ruined my self-esteem and treated me like crap when I needed him the most, so this was the perfect time to tell him who he really was. I called my uncle and told him that I was going to see him in a couple of days. I also called my dad and told him that I was going to my uncle's place and I knew he would get there even before me. As expected, my dad was already waiting there for me. I told my uncle everything I knew and apologized to him for keeping him in the dark, even when I could inform him before. I told him how my dad had hidden Grandma's jewelry as he did not want to give my uncle a share, and also lied about the rents, which were increased now. My uncle is a naive person and never suspected my dad. My dad was devastated and tried to attack me, but stopped when I told him that I had already called the cops to get him. I had not. My dad left the place immediately. My uncle has sued him, and I am sure he is going to get every penny out of my dad through the court. I know I should have disclosed everything years ago, but I guess this was a perfect time. NTA, perfect revenge. OP did what needed to be done. I felt sorry for her when she had to leave her husband's place and move to her dad's, but he was not welcoming at all. Why do such parents not support their kids when they need them the most? OP's aunt was much better and was so kind, to be honest, but her dad was such a pain in the ass. NTA, most of the people saying that OP should have disclosed her dad's cheating long ago have to understand that kids do not want their parents to get in trouble most of the time. But OP's dad deserved to be exposed to that, too, by his own daughter. I hope he gets the worst and some sense, too, through his thick head. I don't really get along with my dad that well, but he has custody of me for a few months per year. The backstory is that my parents divorced when I was 8. My mom was having an emotional relationship, TBF, but I'm pretty sure my dad was sleeping around a lot. I just have a lot of vague memories of him hanging out with nice ladies that weren't my mom without my mom being there. Then one day he was like, I'm leaving your mom for Shelley, the 23-year-old nanny you've had for 3 months. And then was all shocked Pikachu face when Kid Me wasn't like, yay, can't wait to live with my new mommy, Nanny Shelley. I'm 16 now. It's been almost 10 years and I went to therapy and everything. I don't really care about Shelley that much either. I blame my dad much more than her. If it wasn't Shelley, it would have been someone else, and eventually my mom probably would have left my dad anyway. But that doesn't mean I like her or respect her that much. She was having some friends from her work over, which was really unusual. I came out for food, and one of the coworkers waved me over to where they were sitting and started asking me how old I was and if I'd started applying for schools yet and stuff. I was feeling really awkward and just wanted an excuse to escape the room, so I picked up my half sister who was playing on the floor nearby and told Shelley I'd put her down. Shelley would normally say thank you, but instead said like thank you in a really OTT way and saying how great I was and how close I was to my half sister and all this stuff. One of the coworkers was like, you two have such a great relationship. How long have you known each other? Usually, when we get asked the how did you meet question, Shelley or my dad is like, we met and just knew right away. The age difference between them is obvious, but they moved to a new city post divorce. So did my mom. So it's easy to not share the details. But I don't think anyone has ever directly asked me how I met Shelley. So I was like, oh, Shelley was my nanny before the divorce. I didn't say it, but I didn't really have to. There was this long, awkward silence, and I left the room with my half sister. Shelley was really mad at me for bringing up the past like that, and I do feel bad because she just started working again. She has been a stay-at-home mom, but now my half sister is in school, so she wanted to work again and actually start working in her degree field for the first time ever. So she really wanted these coworkers and this company to like her, and I outed her, even though she said all this nice stuff about me first, which, yes, she was doing for her coworkers, but it wasn't totally made up. Like, she said real, true, nice things about me. I don't know why I said what I said, honestly. It was very embarrassing to her. If you were 25, I'd be yikes. But you're 16 years old, and your stepmom did you dirty by getting with your married parents. So you get a pass from me. Not the nicest move, but pretty common for teenagers to roast their parents at the worst times. I know you blame your dad more, and he does have a greater burden of the blame for the disruptions in your life, but anyone hired to look out for your emotional and physical well-being, like a teacher, tutor, coach, or nanny, does have a moral obligation to not harm you, a child in their care. Your stepmom really messed up when she owed you to be a positive influence. NTA, being close to your little sibling is a blessing your stepmom should be grateful for. She should consider herself lucky you haven't been roasting her continuously since you were 8. My wife, 33, and I, 35, male, recently got married. We decided on a child-free wedding because we wanted people to be able to relax, have a good time, and not have to worry about screaming babies. My mother-in-law, when asked about this, told every one of her relatives that they, of course, were an exception, and we would be delighted to welcome their children. By the time we learned of this, flights and hotels had already been booked, and mother-in-law threw up her hands and said, well, what was I supposed to tell people to do with their children? After offering some suggestions about what they could do, some further suggestions as to where she could stick what, and using a few words a lot more harsh than a-hole, my father-in-law stepped in, apologized, and we came to an agreement. We would allow the children to attend. Mother-in-law and father-in-law would pay for all additional headcount. Everyone would be told that they were responsible for keeping their children under control, and if they didn't, they would be removed. This meant babies were to be brought into the cry room at the church if crying. Children were not to run around the reception, and no part of the ceremony was to be interrupted. I had the absolute right to have someone removed if their children were not under control. Mother-in-law took this to mean that if someone's kids were acting up, she'd have time to address it and fix things. I will admit, people were good for the most part. We had a few babies crying in the church, a few kids were loud, but their parents kept them under control and quieted them. Then came our first dance. We were about a minute into the song when I heard people start laughing and whooping. I looked over to see a child had run onto the dance floor and was started dancing with her arms in the air. I recognized her as the 2-year-old daughter of my wife's cousin. I looked around for her mom and found her laughing and filming her daughter on her cell phone. We finished our dance and I walked over to the venue staff and instructed them to remove her and her daughter from the reception. 2 minutes later, my mother-in-law came flying over screaming that she didn't do anything wrong and I couldn't remove her. I replied that she had broken the rules. This is why I didn't want children there and she had to go. My wife agrees with me, but feels badly that her cousin traveled from Louisiana and had to leave the reception. She also hates that her mother is not speaking to us anymore. Her mom says that I'm cruel, evil, and hate children. Father-in-law agrees that the rules were broken and I had the right to kick them out, but thinks a warning would have been more appropriate. I contend that we only get one first dance, knowing what would happen, rather than try to control the situation. Her cousin decided to laugh and film her daughter ruining our first dance. Had she gotten her daughter off the dance floor immediately after it happened, I would not have done anything. NTA, I think there is no better time than the wedding to let an in-law know that you aren't going to put up with any of their crap. I have little doubt that mother-in-law has been like this her whole life. Her attempt to take control of your wedding was a total power move from the get-go, and you did well to shut it down when you did. NTA, it is so disrespectful to do that during the first dance, let alone any special moment at the wedding. And to turn around and see them standing and laughing, I would have removed them right then and there and restarted the first dance. I personally paid for a videographer for my wedding, and I would not stand for that, period. Let them be mad. You found out who your true people are, the ones who have your back.